In my mind, the difference between a burger and a patty melt is sliced bread versus a bun. When I started KronnerBurger, it was like a very specific set of ingredients. The patty melt was an opportunity to kind of have a foil to the KronnerBurger in that it has really hot mustard, caramelized onions, both melted cheese as well as a cream sauce. So it's like the bizarro world KronnerBurger. Hi, I'm Chris Kronner from KronnerBurger in Oakland, California, and Henry's in Berkeley, California. And today we are making dry-aged beef patty melts from my new book, A Burger to Believe In. So we're gonna start with some dry-aged beef. The dry aging process, it reduces the moisture content, so it's concentrating flavor as well as tenderizing. We have two cuts here. This is the ribeye, that's your T-bone. The ribeye has enough of its own fat that you don't necessarily need to add fat. We are going to do two versions of the sandwich. One using a meat grinder, and the second we will cut by hand. When we were writing the book, we went to the grocery store and bought every variation of packaged ground from the butcher counter, and it's just never as good, especially the prepackaged. The prepackaged tends to have a ton of additional moisture. Fresh ground, either by your butcher or if you have the capability of doing it at home, is always preferable. Put the ribeye in the freezer just to chill it down to make it easier to cut by hand. We're going to cut up the T-bone so that we can pop it in the freezer and then run it through the grinder. So we operated KronnerBurger in the Mission as a pop-up, and then we opened KronnerBurger the restaurant, which was open for 3 years. We recently had a fire that has left the restaurant closed, unfortunately. So now we're gonna take our beef that's been cut into half-inch cubes, and we're gonna stick it in the freezer. Our meat has chilled in the freezer for about 20-30 minutes. This is the T-bone, so it's nice and firm. It should grind really well. Load all the beef into our tray, and then we can use our plunger to move it through the grinder. Okay, now that our meat is ground, I'm gonna grab the ribeye from the freezers, cut it by hand. So if you don't have a meat grinder, this is the best alternative. As you can see, it's much easier to cut once it has been chilled thoroughly. So you can get really nice, even cuts pretty easily. Very gently combine it so that the fat is evenly distributed. This is definitely the luxury version of a patty melt, using a ribeye with all this fat. So you can see the difference between the two. I'm gonna use a ring mold to form them. If you don't have a ring mold, you could use the lid of a jar. Just eyeball these patties. Each patty is roughly like 4.5, 5 ounces. Make sure that it is fully compacted so that it stays together, but not that you're overworking it. It's really important that the size of all of your components are in alignment, so that everything as equal as possible. Do the exact same thing with the ground meat. We're going to put them in the refrigerator to cool them down until it's time to cook. We are going to caramelize the onions. We'll start with 1 white onion, 5 tablespoons of unsalted butter. You slice the onion and then gently cook it in the butter over medium-low heat for about 45 minutes so that the sugar can caramelize. Once they start to cook, you just want to make sure that nothing is sticking to the bottom of the pan. You should really only stir them like 3 times. So now we just stand here for 45 minutes. Okay, now we're going to make the béchamel, super classic French milk sauce thickened with roux. So we're gonna start by melting a tablespoon of butter, a tablespoon of flour, whisk it together. The flour will bloom twice, so turn white very quickly. Once it has done that, add our milk. You wanna stir it as you add the milk because it will immediately begin to thicken as the milk heats. And you just wanna completely incorporate the roux so you don't end up with any clumps of flour. And you can see how thick it is there, and it will continue to thicken as you heat it. While that is happening, we will add the cream and then our bay leaf and a pinch of nutmeg. You don't want it to be too strong. We're gonna add a pinch of salt and a little pepper. It started to boil gently, so this is when it will thicken. So I'm gonna turn the heat down and let it continue to simmer very gently. So our onions have been cooking for about 45 minutes over low heat. As you can see, they are deeply caramelized without being burned. There's like a really sweet onion and butter smell. That's a great indicator that they're cooked. I actually cook everything this way, so just like butter and whatever the fuck it is just goes in the pan and we cook it until it falls apart. We have some aged white cheddar cheese to be grated, hot mustard powder, just mixed with a little bit of water, vinegar, salt. We have a sourdough Pullman loaf from She-Wolf Bakery here in Brooklyn. So to assemble the patty melts, we're going to brush mustard onto both slices of bread on one side. We'll then add a little bit of caramelized onion and the grated cheese. Butter the exteriors so you can evenly toast the bread on both sides. So here are our 2 sets of patties, hand cut, ground. We're going to season them with salt pretty liberally. We're gonna add a little knock of butter to one side of the patty melt. It just helps to evenly brown and caramelize the meat. Cook it over medium-high heat so that you get lots of browning, but you are not cooking it through. While our patties are cooking, I'm going to put the sandwiches in the salamander to fully melt the cheese. 1.5 to 2 minutes on one side and then a minute on the other side should give you a nice rare interior with the ground meat. With the hand-cut meat, it's not really as easy to time because it just doesn't have the same even consistency. Now we're gonna add some bechamel. You can be liberal with the bechamel. Okay, our patty melts are done. Nicely toasted on the exterior, hopefully still very rare on the interior. So here's our perfectly cooked patty melt. And then some dill pickles on the side. It's delicious. It's always delicious. This is one of my favorite things, like in the world.